Hi everybody, welcome back to another James Bond review. This time we are reviewing The Living Daylights, 1987. A Timothy Dalton James Bond this time. This is the first Timothy Dalton of two James Bond movies that he was in, and it comes 2 years after the release of A View to a Kill, the final Roger Moore movie. That is a lot of information to take in all at once. I'll give you a little bit of time. That's enough time. As I said, it's a 2 year break from Roger Moore, and it very well could have actually starred Pierce Brosnan as James Bond, and was going to happen if not for the final moments. When they were casting for this film, they were looking for an actor that could actually portray James Bond, as they always do. I think it was Sam Neill was at one point the favourite, the absolute, everybody loved him, except for Cubby Broccoli. Cubby Broccoli said, no, he's not right for James Bond. Then they looked at a gentleman by the name of Timothy Dalton. Now, Timothy Dalton had been offered the role all the way back in, 1971, possibly? 72? Whenever they were casting for Live and Let Die, which was Roger Moore's first film, they were looking at an actor for James Bond before Roger Moore, and Timothy Dalton was one of the actors that had popped up. But Timothy Dalton at the time was too young, and he said so. He said to the producers, look, I would love to be James Bond, but I'm too young for the role. Don't come to me yet. You need someone in their mid to late 30s. That is the role. So he respectfully declined the offer, didn't even screen test for the role. But Cubby Broccoli thought, you know what, this guy's pretty good. We're going to go back to this guy. And then again, when Roger Moore was going to retire after Moonraker, which was 1979, with Moonraker, they looked again. And they went back to Timothy Dalton, and Timothy Dalton again said, no, I'm okay at the moment. I'm still a bit too young and everything like that. And he also didn't really like the way the movies were progressing after Moonraker. He thought they were becoming too fantastical, a little bit too science fiction, and that wasn't for him. He wanted a grounded Bond. So when this film here was being cast, producers actually went back to Timothy Dalton again. And this time here, Timothy Dalton was interested. He was now in his late 30s, and he thought to himself, yeah, this role's right for me. But he still wasn't happy with how the James Bond film series had been handled up to this point. He wanted a more grounded, a more serious approach to Bond. And the producers were on board for that. They were going to tailor the script toward him, and they really wanted Timothy Dalton. So Timothy Dalton wanted to do the movie, but he was about to start shooting the movie Brenda Starr, which would have delayed filming, and they couldn't do that. So Timothy Dalton was out. He was gone now. And now they had to look for another James Bond again. And that's when Cubby Broccoli remembered an actor by the name of Pierce Brosnan. Now, all the way back during For Your Eyes Only, Cassandra Harris was in that movie. She played Countess Lucille, I believe her name was in that. It's been a while since I've watched it again. But she was in the movie, and she was at the time married to Pierce Brosnan. Now, Pierce Brosnan came to set, obviously, to visit her and everything like that. And producers looked at this guy and they thought, let us remember this guy because he's got the chops. We think he could be a good Bond one day. And lo and behold, many years later, Pierce Brosnan actually screen tested for the role as James Bond. And the screen tests are up online. He did a fantastic, phenomenal job to the point where he was actually cast as James Bond, offered the role, he accepted. He was cast as James Bond. Unfortunately, he was also in a TV show at the time called Remington Steele, which was at an end. But there was still an option. They had a 60-day option, the production company, that said if they chose to, they could rejig his contract to bring him back to continue filming Remington Steele. And on day, as I've heard, and I've heard a couple of different things, but on the final days of this 60-day contract running out, they renewed Remington Steele again for another season. And Cubby Broccoli said, Remington Steele will not be James Bond, and James Bond will not be Remington Steele. And they pulled the offer from Pierce Brosnan, at which point Brenda Starr had finished filming, and Timothy Dalton was now available again. And one weekend later, Timothy Dalton was on set filming his first scenes in Gibraltar, which was the training mission at the beginning of the film. What a roller coaster of a casting session that was when you really think about it. Because, I mean, Pierce Brosnan is a wonderful James Bond. He really is. Throughout the 90s and the early 2000s, he really brought James Bond to the mainstream. You've really got to think about it. I grew up watching Pierce Brosnan throughout the 90s, and the fact that he could have been cast in 1987 and we could have had 10 plus years of Pierce, that's like, I don't even know how to process that. In saying that though, we've got Timothy Dalton, and although Timothy Dalton only did 2 Bond movies, what he gives us here in both films, but in this one especially, in The Living Daylights, is fantastic. And I'm going to be completely upfront here and say that this is in my top 10 James Bond movies. Since I recorded and uploaded A View to a Kill, I have watched this movie no less than 15 times over that period of time. I've just had it on in the background. I've watched it on the big screen that I've got in my theatre room. I've watched it on my monitors. I've had split screen going at each point. I've had it on my phone at work. I've listened to it. I've had it every possible area in my life. This movie has been playing, and I never get sick of it. This movie I can have on repeat daily, 24/7, and I will always watch this movie. It is one of my favourite Bond films of all time, and I really don't have I don't have many downsides, I should say. There are always downsides, but this movie here from beginning to end is brilliant. Now, when it comes to the plot of this movie, it can be a little bit confusing. And even me, someone who's watched it 15 times, let's say this month, it still confuses me when I'm watching it a bit. So the movie begins as a training mission in Gibraltar. You've got 3 00 agents. They skydive out of a plane, land on this like little island, which is like a little training mission that they've got going on. And it's all with paintball guns and things like that. So if you get shot, you're out of it, you're finished, move on, and that's how it is. So at this point here, we're introduced to Timothy Dalton for the first time. And we're introduced to him at the exact moment that one of his fellow agents is murdered. He's climbing up a rock face, and someone cuts the line just after they've put a note down the rope, which says "Smurt Spionen," which is death to spies. And the agent sees it, and then sees the guy cut the rope, and then falls to his death. And Bond hears the screams, runs over, sees the enemy running away, and gives chase. And jumps on the back of this guy's Jeep, fighting each other. The Jeep explodes as it goes off a cliff, and Bond has got a parachute, and he's just falling down. And it is a wonderful opening because you get to see just how cut to the chase Timothy Dalton is. He's ruthless, he is deadly, and he's fantastic. Like, I know the stunt people are doing all the big stunts. I get that, but I don't see it in this film. In this film here, I'm just seeing Bond. I'm not noticing Stuntman and Timothy Dalton. And I think that was the major problem with Roger Moore's later era, is that I was seeing Roger Moore, James Bond, Stuntman. And credit to all of their work because it is brilliant, but I just want to see one person on screen and believe that it's the same person across the actor and the stunt performer. I don't want to see, Timothy Dalton, stunt performer. And this film here perfectly blends the two of them together, and you just see one person throughout the whole film, and that's what I love. And the opening sequence, as I said, in Gibraltar, is just a wonderful, wonderful opening to Timothy Dalton, a wonderful introduction to Timothy Dalton as James Bond. It's a quick scene. It's like 5 minutes beginning to end. We jump into the title sequence, which is the Living Daylights song, as sung by a-ha, the one-hit wonders that they are, but brilliant. This song here, again, I've had this song going the entire month. I've listened to it on repeat at work today about 5 or 6 times. I love both versions of it. Now, there are 2 versions of this song. I don't know if people are aware of that. I wasn't aware of it until about 10 years ago, that obviously John Barry rearranges or produces the title songs and brings a motif into the title songs that he can then use throughout the film. Like an undercurrent of musical elements from the movie, he brings it into the theme song, and it works perfectly. But a-ha released their own version of this, and it's a slight bit different. If you ever get a chance, and if I can put it into this review, you'll hear it. If not, search it on YouTube and listen to them back to back. There is a difference, and I like them just as much as each other. I still prefer the John Barry version, but the a-ha version, I still like it just as much. It's still brilliant. But after this title sequence is over, we move into the movie itself. And the beginning of the film is apparently, and I haven't read the books, so forgive me, I am a Bond fan of the movies. I haven't read the Ian Fleming novels. I apologise. Yell at me if you wish. Put it in the comments, whatever you want to do. Forgive me, though. But the movie begins with Bond going to the opera. Or not even the opera. It's more of a musical performance. So he goes to this musical performance and meets up with the head of Section V, Vienna, and that's Saunders, an agent by the name of Saunders. And already at the beginning of this part here, Saunders rubs you up the wrong way. He's completely dismissive of Bond. Bond's interested in the cellist, which is played by, I was going to say Cara Malovi. That's her name. Cara Malovi is the cellist. She's played by Mariam Diabo. Beautiful woman. Absolutely stunning woman. And Bond, she catches his eye, and Bond's looking at her, whereas Saunders wants to talk about the mission. So once they go across the street into this, like a little apartment building, an apartment, yeah. Once they go across the street, it's here that we get the mission, which is that Saunders has arranged for a KGB general, Koskov, that's his name, Georgy Koskov, to defect. And he's coming to the British, but he needs James Bond to take out a sniper because he's being tailed or watched. He's got pretty much KGB minders with him at all times. And the only way Koskov can escape them is by going into the bathroom, opening up a window, and then escaping through there onto the street. At which point, there's a sniper in the window watching. And the sniper just happens to be Cara Malovi. And she's aiming the weapon. Bond grabs his sniper rifle, but instead of shooting her, he shoots the actual sniper rifle itself, which explodes in her arm, and she gets a bit of damage on her arm. But they get Koskov. Bond and Saunders are butting heads throughout the whole part of how to get him across the border into Vienna, which is done through a pipeline. And after this, Bond is pretty much telling Saunders, look, stuff your mission. It was all done. Yes, I didn't kill the sniper, but I definitely scared the living daylights out of her. And that 5 to 10 minute sequence there is such an amazing sequence that if that had been the introduction to Timothy Dalton's James Bond, I would have been just as happy. Like, if we had opened the movie with Bond and Saunders getting Koskov out of Bratislava and into Vienna, and then when he says, because the scene ends with Bond saying, whoever it was, whoever she was, it scared the living daylights out of her. If that had then cut to the title song, The Living Daylights, I would have I think I would have died. Like, every time I watch that part and Bond says that in the car, I'm always expecting the theme song to kick in. It never does, but I'm always waiting for the theme song to kick in. And if someone make an edit of that, please put that up online so I can watch that version of the movie. But yeah, what an amazing two sequences we have so far of Timothy Dalton as James Bond. And what a way for the audience to just get into this character. Because he's not making any quips. He's not making any jokes. He's just serious, deadly serious about his job. And he doesn't care. He does not care if M fires him. He doesn't care if Saunders doesn't like. He's not there to be liked. He's there to get in there, do his job, kill a professional, which Kara wasn't, and rescue Koskov. And he does all of those things. And I'm always blown away. Every time I watch Living Daylights, the first 20 minutes of this movie, 15 minutes of this movie, I am just in awe of what's on screen. And I think the writing is top notch. The directing by John Glenn, returning. This is now his fourth James Bond movie. Fantastic. Like, all the players of this movie, all the main players of this movie are introduced within these sequences here. And it really does give you can the rest of the movie hold up? Because these are pretty damn phenomenal. But needless to say, it does. So after this, after they get Koskov and he defects to the British, which is great, he then explains his plan, which is that General Pushkin, I almost forgot his name, General Pushkin, which is the head of the KGB, has now said he's given the order Smert Spionen, which is death to spies. And he's going to go out there and start killing British agents, secret agents. And in the first mission, which was the training mission in Gibraltar, that's why the agent was killed. That's why that single agent was killed, because death to spies. And Koskov is saying, well, Pushkin is out there trying to do this. He's lost his mind. He's gone crazy. You need to kill him. And M is talking with Bond and says, look, I've known this guy. I know that he's a good friend of ours. We've got good relations with the KGB at the moment. But if he's out there killing people, and Koskov is telling us this, Bond, you need to go kill him. And Bond is like, I will do it. But first of all, I have to go back to Bratislava. I have to go back to the Czechoslovakia and speak with this female cellist who is Kara Malovi, which is also the assassin. So when he goes there and speaks with her, it's after Koskov, he's been kidnapped from a hideaway house by a guy called Necros, who is an assassin, we believe at this point working for the KGB. Necros, who breaks into this place as a milkman, breaks into this place, goes through the kitchen and kills a couple of people, blows up half the building, gets Koskov, jumps on an ambulance helicopter, and they fly away. At which point Bond goes back to Bratislava, meets up with Kara Malovi, pretends to be Koskov's friend because he wants to find out what Kara knows, because he does not trust Koskov. Because now that Koskov's been kidnapped again, he's like, something's going on. And he also knows that the bullets that she was using in the sniper rifle were blanks. And Koskov was defecting. So he gave blank bullets to Kara to pretend to shoot him, who was defecting, and then was asking for Bond to kill the sniper. And we find out that Koskov and Kara are girlfriend and boyfriend. They're in love together. Or so she believes. So Bond says, I've got to get you out of Bratislava and I've got to get you to Vienna, even though you're being watched by the KGB. And there is another amazing sequence with James Bond's Aston Martin V8, and it is one of my favourite car sequences in all of James Bond. And I know that I love the Lotus Esprit sequence in The Spy Who Loved Me, and this sequence here is probably just as good and just as action-packed. Like, you get every single gadget you can think of being used, and it is almost like a massive updated version of the Aston Martin DB5, which was used in Goldfinger. Like, instead of the spikes on the tyres, this one here's got a laser that cuts through the entire bottom of a pursuing police car. Instead of machine guns at the front in the headlights, this car here's got rockets that shoot out and explode. It's also got bulletproof glass. It's got a police radio scanner in the radio of the car. There's a sequence where they go out onto the ice, like the river, icy river, and the front tire of the car gets blown off, and Bond uses it, goes in a circle around a police car on the ice, and because it's only the rim of the steel rim, it cuts through the ice, and the police car sinks into the ice, and it's always makes me laugh when I see it. But he puts out the outrigger on the side, and these two like ski pads drop down from the side of the car. Spikes come out of the tires. It's got a rocket booster on the back and a self-destruct mechanism just in case he gets caught. And you see all of it in this movie, and it is phenomenal. That's a 5 to 10 minute sequence where Bond is just pure action. And the way they escape is fantastic, because there was a moment before this where Bond and Cara are in the Aston Martin escaping KGB, and she tells Bond, I have to go back and get my my cello. And he's like, no, we're being chased. There is no way we're going back. Anyway, she eventually convinces him. Bond hits his head with the cello case, gets it into the Aston Martin, looks pissed off all the while doing it. And then when he sets the self-destruct on the Aston Martin, they then use the cello case flat, opened up and flat, on the snow, and they like sled down the snow across the border into Vienna, and they're dodging bullets. There's KGB chasing them with machine guns, shooting at them, and they completely and utterly escape. And it is so awesome to see it, especially because you actually see Timothy Dalton and Mariam Diabo on this sled at that time. Like, it's just, there are so many good things about this movie, and that's just a couple of them right there. And the entire movie continues like that. Eventually you find out that there's another character involved with Koskov and Necros, because Necros, which is the assassin, is like the henchman to Koskov. And then you find out that Koskov is working with another guy called Brad Whitaker. Now, Brad Whitaker in this movie, he's kind of, I don't really like this character. This is one of my negative points about this movie. So the whole idea is that there's $50 million that the KGB have given to Brad Whitaker to buy weapons for the KGB. Brad Whitaker, though, along with General Koskov, are using this $50 million to buy opium, to then sell the opium at a profit. Then they're going to use the money to buy weapons for the KGB and some for Whitaker too, and still have profit and money on the side. It is an extremely convoluted plot. Now, because they're doing this with the money, and they're kind of like being shady toward the KGB and trying to get the British involved, they're only getting the British involved because they're trying to use the MI6 James Bond to kill General Pushkin, who is aware that something shady is happening between Brad Whitaker and Koskov. Now, if that doesn't make any sense, I'm sorry. It is confusing as hell in the movie, and you really have to pay attention to understand what's going on. And the entire movie is a massive traveling point of this movie. Like, there is so much going on. We go from London to Czechoslovakia to Vienna. Then we go to Tangier. Then we go to Afghanistan. Then we go back to Tangier. Then back to Vienna. There are so many sequences in this movie, and so many fantastic action sequences in this movie. And it's a refreshing thing to see after watching A View to a Kill, where everything kind of felt, as I mentioned in that review, everything kind of felt a little bit sluggish, but you could also tell that Roger Moore was older. You could see he was more matured. He had aged so much, and you could see that he was fighting older people. He was just, everything about the film was slower and sluggish and this and that. And I did not like the Bond girl in that. In this film here, you've got a younger Bond, even though Timothy Dalton is like 40, I believe, at this point. You've got a younger Bond, a sexy as hell Bond girl in Cara Mallovi. You've got a little bit of a convoluted plot, but it's still a solid plot, and it's a globe-trekking plot. Like, there is... Why are we going to Afghanistan? Well, we need to go to Afghanistan because of these reasons and these reasons. And it's got a fantastic henchman. Like, Necros is brilliant. And I'm going to find out the actor's name because credit where it's deserved here. And the actor's name is Andreas Wisniewski. I believe that's how you pronounce it. And if you know that guy, he's one of the henchmen in Die Hard. And he's also in Mission Impossible. He's the one that puts the mask over Tom Cruise's head in the first Mission Impossible movie when Tom Cruise or Ethan Hunt is going to meet Job. And he's brilliant in this movie. Like, first of all, the physique on this guy is, whoa, crazy. This guy is amazing. Now, he was apparently a model and a dancer. They found him, they liked him, they put him in this movie. And there's one sequence where you can see when he's in the kitchen and he's going through the kitchen area and fighting one of the agents in there. And some of the moves that he pulls off just look a little bit weird. The rest of it, wow. And even there's an entire sequence where Bond and Necros are fighting on the back of like one of those massive cargo planes, and they've just taken off from the airbase, and Kara's piloting the plane, and Bond goes in the back to dismantle a bomb, to stop the timer on the bomb. And Necros attacks Bond. Bond hits the opening at the back, and the cargo thing drops down. And the opium, which is trapped in this massive net, is hanging out the back, and it's only hung on by like hooks. And Bond and Necros are fighting in the netting on the back as it flaps up and down in the wind like that. And the sequence is jaw-dropping. And trust me, I watched this on the big screen with the sound system on, and with the camera pulled all the way back, and you can see the plane and the stunt actors flapping around and fighting. Wowee, like, it just blows you away how dedicated these guys are to the performance, how the stunt work is just top notch, and it deserves Oscars, deserves credit. Like, stunt workers, if we didn't have stunt performers, we wouldn't have movies nowadays. They are just fantastic, and it's so good, like, I love it. And Timothy Dalton in this movie is, like, I always say that George Lazenby is my favourite Bond. But watching this movie so many times over this month has proven to me that George Lazenby is not my number one. That's all I'm going to say. And I will say more, actually. No, stuff that. I will say more. George Lazenby is no longer my number one James Bond. And he has been my number one James Bond for about 15 years. But I have never watched this movie as many times as I have right this month. And easily, Timothy Dalton is my number one James Bond. He absolutely destroys the screen. He is so good in this movie. He's deadly, vicious, but sweet. Like, the moments between him and Kara, when he's romancing her, I absolutely loved it. Like, I cannot say enough good things about this movie, and I'm always blown away every single time I watch this movie. And one of the other things I really like about this film is that in the opening moments of this movie, Saunders and Bond are butting heads. They do not like each other. Bond is dismissive of Saunders. Saunders is dismissive of Bond, wants to dob him in because he didn't complete the mission. He didn't shoot the sniper. Bond's like, stuff your orders, I don't care. This is how I'm doing the mission. You don't see Saunders for like another hour and a bit in this film. And then Whitaker says to Koskov, you need to go out and force MI6's hands so they kill Pushkin because he's getting close. He wants his money back. So Koskov says to Necros, you need to go out there and kill another agent. And unfortunately, Saunders is that agent. And the reason I say unfortunately is because Bond is starting to piece things together, but he's not quite there between what's going on with Kara and what's going on with Koskov. So he says to Saunders, listen, I need you to do this for me. I need you to organise a passport for Kara. I need you to do this. And Saunders pretty much says, listen, if I do this, I'm going to lose my pension. You understand this? And Bond's like, this is important. I need this. And in that moment, Saunders goes, okay, I'll do it for you. And he does. He comes through. Like a couple of hours later, he meets up with Bond. They have like a coffee together. And it's at this point here that Bond and Saunders agree with each other. And finally, there's mutual respect there. And Saunders leaves, having gained Bond's respect, and then dies. And Bond, Timothy Dalton, runs outside. A balloon is like laying next to Saunders' body. He grabs the balloon. It says "Smeared Spionen" on it. And he pops the balloon. He just breaks it. And he's pissed. He's pissed. Now he's like, now I have to go after General Pushkin. Now I've got to kill this guy. Because he was putting it off. Now he's going for him. And it's those little moments that Timothy Dalton does that, where you just think there is no other Bond as good as this guy. Like, he's the best of the best. Now, I know everyone's fallen in love with Daniel Craig, and I know Daniel Craig does this and that. Daniel Craig's got nothing on Timothy Dalton. Let me just say that. If it wasn't for Timothy Dalton, you wouldn't even have a Daniel Craig. Now, the rest of the cast in this movie, top notch. I love Mariam Diabo. She's beautiful. She's good in this movie. She's really good in this movie. And I like that she's the only Bond girl in this film. Like, you've got the girl in the Gibraltar training mission at the very beginning where Bond lands on like the sailboat. And obviously he beds this woman. But she's in it for maybe 35 seconds. Kara's in it for the whole film. She's introduced as soon as we come back from the title sequence. She's there. She's the cellist. She's the sniper. She's Koskov's girlfriend. And she's with Bond throughout the whole film until the very end. And I absolutely love it. I don't think there are any negatives to this film apart from Brad Whitaker. I don't really like his involvement in the film. I find that if you just change the plot slightly and got rid of him, you could still have effectively the same movie without him, but it feels like he needs to be there so that there's a big bad that Bond has to go up against at the end of the film. Because he doesn't kill Koskov in this movie. Necros dies, Koskov doesn't. Koskov is just sent back to Russia. He's fine. Pushkin understands what Bond's doing, and yeah, but Brad Whitaker, every time this guy's on screen, I'm like, all right, do you really need to be there? And he's not in the film that much, like maybe 15 minutes of the movie is dedicated to anything to do with Brad Whitaker. But it's the fact that those 15 minutes are there in the film. It just kind of feels, I don't know, he's there, I guess. He's there. Yeah, I don't know. Look, this movie here is, like I said, easily in my top 10. Could possibly be in my top 5, but I'm going to save that until I finish this entire review, or all of these reviews. And I don't really think there's anything else I can say about this film other than the musical score by John Barry. And it's actually John Barry's final musical score for James Bond. He makes an appearance in this movie at the end in Vienna as the would you call it the composer, I guess? The maestro. Let's say the maestro. He's actually playing there at the very end of the movie. So he gets his first on-screen appearance and his final credit as composer for the James Bond franchise. And it's probably his best musical score. Like, there are so many fantastic tracks in this movie, especially when Bond's on his mission in Gibraltar, his training mission. There's the action sequence on the snow. All of the action music in this film is top-notch. Like, it is, beginning to end, the musical score is fantastic. I own the musical score. I mean, I even own this film on VHS twice. It's there and there. I own the movie twice. That's how much I adore this movie. And funny enough, when I purchased, you can see them there, they're like the tan brownish color. When I purchased it on VHS, the first Timothy Dalton movie I purchased was The Living Daylights, and I loved it as back in the day. And my mum actually is a big James Bond fan, and she said to me, "Oh, Timothy Dalton, how many Bond movies was he in?" And I said, "Oh, he's in 2 films. He's in The Living Daylights and License to Kill." And Mum goes, "Oh, okay. Do you want me to buy you the other one on video?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, please, Mum, that'll be great." So my mum went out, purchased it, and she purchased another copy of The Living Daylights because she said to me later on, I got confused, The Living and License. I didn't think they both had 3 words in them. And I'm like, fair point, Mum, fair point. So then I went out after that and I brought License to Kill myself. So I own 2 copies of The Living Daylights, which I'm not going to complain about that. I also own the soundtrack, which is down here somewhere. So also not going to complain because I love the movie and I love the soundtrack, which is down there. So, to me, it all screams thumbs up. Now, that's the review of the film. Yeah, let's go with that. That's my review of The Living Daylights. Now what I have to do is talk about Bond's kill count. But let's start off... the kill count. Now, Bond in this film kills 7 people. He kills the assassin on the training mission in Gibraltar. He eventually kills Necros by kind of like, well, watch the film. It's the plane sequence. They're hanging off, and Bond actually uses his knife to cut the shoelaces off his boot, and Necros is holding onto it and falls out to his death. And wow, what a moment! Then he drops a bomb from the plane, which drops onto a bridge, which kills a tank crew, and there's a crew of like 4 people. And then at the very end of the movie, he kills Brad Whitaker. So that's a total of 7 kills in this film. He visits 6 individual locations. We've got Gibraltar, Bratislava, which is in Czechoslovakia. Then he goes to London, then Vienna, then Tangier, then Afghanistan. So 6 locations here. And finally, for women bedded, he's got the woman on the boat at the very beginning of the film, and then Kara. And that's it. That's literally it. Throughout the whole film, it's like a walking mission or an escort mission in video games. He's got Kara with him the entire time. And she does not know that Bond is trying to find Koskov to potentially kill him. She just believes that Bond and Koskov are friends and Bond's trying to find Koskov. And then when she eventually finds out what's going on by getting in contact with Brad Whitaker, who passes the phone on to Koskov, she is told that Bond is actually a KGB assassin trying to kill Koskov. And she poisons Bond and then instantly regrets it when he tells her, that mark on your hand, that bruise, that was because I shot the gun out of your arm. And it's, look, from beginning to end, The Living Daylights, top movie. If you haven't watched it, go out and watch it. I highly recommend it. And what a fantastic opening to Timothy Dalton's run as James Bond. And I know, like I said, I know he's only in 2. But wow, he leaves his mark on this franchise. And it is a wonderful mark to leave. Now, just as a little thingamabob, a little update to everybody. First of all, I want to say thank you to everybody that watches. I checked my analytics. It says that 97% of the people watching my videos are not subscribed. So if you could subscribe, that would be fantastic because it would put me a lot more than like 68 people subscribed. But again, if you don't want to subscribe, I totally understand. That's fine. I'm not going to push anyone. I'll just say, please subscribe. If not, that's fine. If you like the content, thumbs up. If not, I understand. And if you want to leave a comment telling me who your favorite James Bond is, and let me know what you think about this film. Is it the plot too convoluted? Am I the only one that finds Brad Whitaker a bit of a waste? And is Cara Mallovi the sexiest Bond girl up to this point? And if not, why is she still the sexiest Bond girl up to this point? Let me know in the comments below. I would honestly love to hear it. And I also would love to hear how you're going, because again, mental health is super important. It is not something that we should only be asking on Are You OK Day? It is something we should be asking every day. So I'm hoping that you're doing well. Are you okay? Let me know in the comments below. Hit me up on Instagram. It's on the screen somewhere around here. Probably on my face, my glasses. I don't know. But let's have a conversation in the comments. I'm always there. Always there. So until I see you next time with License to Kill, have a good one. Take care. Watch some videos on the channel. And Ross will return. Hi everyone, welcome back to another James Bond review episode. This time, we're talking about A License to Kill. I'm Ross, and if you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're not new to the channel, welcome back. This is the final Timothy Dalton James Bond movie, and it is a phenomenal way to go out. It's a brilliant movie, an action-packed revenge thriller. This movie has highs, it doesn't have many lows, it's got everything you can want in a James Bond movie and more, and it does it at such a fast pace that this movie feels like it begins and ends in the same hour. It is top notch. I have to say that up front because I feel like it absolutely deserves to have that set up front. Now, this movie here came about 2 years after The Living Daylights, which was the previous review. And coming off that movie, Timothy Dalton said, I want to try something different. I don't want to do the same old James Bond movie. I want to do something. I want to strip James Bond of his gadgets. I want to take him out of his safety and security of MI6. And I want him to just go hardcore on these guys. I want him to just rip them to shreds and absolutely go nuts. And that's what not The Living Daylights. That's what License to Kill is. It is a straight up revenge thriller. Action thriller, I guess. Returning director John Glenn, this is his 5th time in the director's chair, and he came into this movie thinking, we're just going to give it our all. We're going to do our best on this movie, and it absolutely shows on screen. Now, when you look at his past films, he has gotten better and better and better with each subsequent release. The Living Daylights was probably his best up to that point, and License to Kill goes even better than that. It is filmed beautifully in Mexico City, where the majority of the film actually does take place. They did film a little bit of the movie in Florida, in the United States, of course, and that's mostly the beginning, say, 45 minutes of the movie, but the next hour and, say, 25 minutes of the film is all filmed and, well, not set. It's filmed in Mexico City, but it's actually set in the fictional city of Isthmus, which is, south of the border. It's pretty much Mexico without being Mexico. And I think that was done just so that they don't throw any shade at Mexico City. And apparently, behind the scenes, Mexico and the people of Mexico really did give the James Bond film crew everything they could want. They were helpful. Whatever you need, we will do it for you. And the movie shows, you can see these beautiful set pieces. You can see these spectacular action sequences. Every dollar of this movie seems to be thrown up on screen, and I absolutely love it for that. This movie, The License to Kill, is wonderful. Now, I do own it at the back up here on VHS. It was one of those movies when I was younger that I would throw this on because it was a darker film. It was more serious, more action. And I adored it as a kid. And then when it was on DVD and eventually Blu-ray and everything like that, it's one of those movies, one of those James Bond movies where I can always just watch it. No matter what, I can put it on. And I say that often with a lot of James Bond films, that you don't need any backstory, you don't need anything. You can just throw it out of order. If you're watching it in chronological order, you can throw it out of order, put it on and enjoy yourself. But I feel like this movie here is a phenomenal entry point into the James Bond franchise if someone wanted that. I have had in the past people say to me, "Oh, I do want to watch the James Bond movies, but what film should I begin watching?" And my default thing is either watch Casino Royale because it's the beginning of that continuity, or start at the beginning and watch Doctor No because it's the start of the James Bond franchise. But as time has gone on, I've kind of said to people, well, either watch License to Kill because it doesn't really have any of the fantastical like gadgets, and it does have gadgets, but it doesn't have heavy reliance on gadgets throughout the movie. It's the gadgets in this film are kind of like dedicated to one scene, one action set piece, and then they're gone. Or another movie that I recommend is GoldenEye, which is coming up in my next review. But License to Kill for me is from beginning to end such a top-notch movie that it's hard not to recommend it. And I feel like over the last 20 years that Timothy Dalton's run as James Bond has been heavily re-looked at, I should say, re-criticised, but also people are starting to say, oh, I can see what he was doing, and this guy was well and truly ahead of his time. Now, before we get into all of that, let's get into the actual plot of the movie. Now, this movie begins with a wedding. It begins with Felix Leiter. James Bond's there. He's one of his groomsmen. I guess he's best man or one of two best men. And they're in a car driving through the Florida Keys there. And all of a sudden, the DEA helicopter comes down, stops them, and says, "We've got Sanchez. He is now in Florida. We're going after him." And you find out that Sanchez is this drug lord kingpin from Isthmus City. He never leaves, or very rarely leaves, Isthmus City, which again, think of it as Mexico. He very rarely leaves, but he's left this time because his girlfriend, who's called Lupe, she's actually been trying to leave him, and she's been cheating on him with somebody else. And when Sanchez makes his appearance in this movie, he sees Lupe in bed with another man, and Sanchez and his goons grab this guy, and because he's promised his heart to this woman, Sanchez says, well, give him his heart. And the goons take him outside, and you just hear the screams of this guy as Sanchez then whips and tortures his girlfriend because she disrespected him. And that's your introduction to Sanchez. And he's played brilliantly by Robert Davi, who is, if you don't know, he's one of the Fratelli brothers from The Goonies. And he's in that film there. He's an opera singing prison breakout thug, but he's so funny in that movie. And in this film here, he's nothing like that. He's deadly and menacing, and every time you see him on screen opposite Timothy Dalton, you're like, the tension is just there. You feel like you can just cut it with a knife. It's done perfectly. And so in his introduction scene, you find out that one of his main henchmen, is actually played by Benicio del Toro in one of his early acting roles, and he plays his henchman Dario. And again, Benicio del Toro, I first came to see this guy in The Usual Suspects, which was, I believe it was 1994. And when I was rewatching these movies when I was younger, not rewatching, when I was watching them when I was younger, I looked at this guy and I'm like, hang on, that's the same guy that was from The Usual Suspects that didn't really speak English well. And in this movie, he's young, he's crazy, he's deadly, and he's in it for a chunk in the beginning of the movie, a major chunk at the end of the film, and he's kind of not in it in the middle of the movie, and it fits perfectly into the plot, so it's a good thing. But Dario and Sanchez, wow, they are a deadly combination in this movie. When they're together, it gets real, it gets deadly. So anyway, Sanchez has come back to get his girlfriend, who has escaped, or run away, I guess. He's going to take her back to Isthmus City. So as he's doing that, the DEA has found out that, hang on, we've got this guy. He's now in our city. We can arrest him. And there's this wonderful little chase sequence where he flies off in a little plane, and Bond and Felix and the rest of the DEA are in this helicopter dressed up in their wedding suits, and they are giving chase in this helicopter. And they're like, well, he's going to leave the airspace in about 20 minutes. So we're not going to be able to do anything. Once he leaves the airspace, he's out of our jurisdiction. So we're not going to have anything to do. So Bond decides, no, what the hell with this? We're getting this guy. And he puts his parachute on, gets on the side of the plane, which has got this massive hook, this cable, the steel cable. He goes down onto the actual wing, the back fin wing of this little biplane that Sanchez is in, and he wraps the cable around it and then gets the helicopter people to winch it up. And it's this brilliant sequence that you just see it on camera, all of it done, and the plane is just traveling and all of a sudden just goes vertical as they've captured Sanchez. And then Bond and Felix parachute out, land at the wedding, and then they walk in with the bride, and so is the pre-title sequence is done. We then go into the Living Daylights theme song by Gladys Knight, and this movie here was one of those ones I had it on repeat growing up. Awesome. It is not a rock theme, it is more of a power ballad. It very much reminds me of, say, The Spy Who Loved Me, something like that, with a bit of Goldfinger thrown in there. It's wonderful, it's beautiful, and just great. But that introduction to this movie, that whole 10-minute sequence is heart-racing. Like, are they going to get him? Yes, they are. You see Bond, jumping down onto the back of it. Again, the stunt guys in this movie, give them awards, give them praise. They deserve it. It's phenomenal. And then after the title sequence is over and after the theme song's done, we then move to Sanchez. He's now been questioned. He's been arrested by the police. He's being questioned. And Sanchez pretty much says, I'm going to be free. I'm putting a reward for $2 million, whoever breaks me out of here. And he's laughing as the police are the DEA's interrogating him, and he doesn't care. He goes, I'll be free. Don't worry about that. And then in between the interrogation, we then cut to Felix Leiter's wedding. And we see Felix Leiter and his wife, and they're very happy together, and Bondi's there beside him. And it's just a great sequence. And again, I love the fact that they do a callback to Bond himself being married on Her Majesty's Secret Service. And I love that it's continuing the continuity. Because when we came to The Living Daylights, they recast Moneypenny, but they kept M, they kept some of the other supporting crew like Q, and obviously Bond had changed. So it was a bit of a thing of, is this the same continuity we're dealing with? Yeah, it is, because in this film, Felix's wife, Della, she's got her, like, the thing that they hold and they throw it, and whichever guy grabs it is the next one to get married. And she whips it off and then throws it at Bond and says, well, the next one that has this is going to get married. And Bond pretty much just looks at her and says, no, and then thanks them both for the night and then takes off and goes back to his hotel. And she's like, did I do something wrong? And Felix says to her, look, he was married once, but it was a long time ago. And it's this, the way Dalton plays it, that subtle, it just lets you know that this guy's had his heart broken. And I don't know how to explain it. He's so wonderfully done, filmed, acted, everything. That little sequence is just beautiful. And even the accompanying musical score by Michael Kamen, who a lot of people might know from Die Hard and the Lethal Weapon movies. I always had issues with Michael Kamen's score in this movie because I felt like it was too similar to Die Hard and too similar to Lethal Weapon, that it kind of felt like it was a copy and paste job. But the more I've watched this movie over the last 25 years, the more I've really come to appreciate that this film here, the musical score that Michael Kamen brings here to this movie, the amount of originality he's brought into this, the use of the James Bond theme, the subtle musical cues that he just puts throughout the plot as things are happening throughout scenes. It is actually probably one of my favourite musical scores in the James Bond franchise. And that says a lot because John Barry has given us some of the best musical scores in any of the Bond franchise. But Michael Kamen, this movie just grows on me each time I watch it. Not the movie itself. The movie itself is always top for me, but this musical score continues to grow on me each and every single time I listen to it, or each and every time I watch this movie. It is continuously leaving a mark upon my heart where it's just like, oh, wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And this movie here really does set the tone with the musical score. The musical score is brilliant, and like I said, it is one of the best. I think Timothy Dalton has actually lucked out as having 2 James Bond movies, 2 excellent scripts, and 2 musical scores that are just perfect. I can't put a fault to the musical score anymore. It's taken me a while, but I've come around to this musical score, and I will fight tooth and nail to hold it up, to really support this music. Michael Kamen, wonderful job. Absolutely wonderful. Now, during these sequences after the pre-title sequence, when Felix and Dalla are having their night together after the wedding is over, you actually get it intercut with Sanchez and his escape from prison custody. They're transporting him in trucks, in armoured trucks, and all security guard, and you find out that one of the main DEA agents that's actually friends with Felix, this guy's name is Killifer in the movie, he actually turns against the DEA for the $2 million, knocks a guy out with a shotgun. As the truck goes into the ocean, he's rescued along with Sanchez, and they both escape, and he's given the $2 million, and obviously he gives up Felix's address and everything like that, and Sanchez sends Dario to visit Felix on the night of his wedding. And that is a horrible thought, because in the beginning of the movie, when Sanchez saw his girlfriend in bed with another man, what they did to that man, you can only imagine. And when they come to the house of Felix, and Dario is there, and they are holding Felix's wife, we're going to give her, we gave her a nice honeymoon. That haunting thoughts in my head about what they did to her, and then the way that they chain up Felix and feed him to a shark, horrendous. And then the rest of the movie plays off of that sequence of Felix survives, his wife doesn't, but Felix is in intensive care. The DEA doesn't want to do anything about it because either they don't want to or they can't, because Sanchez has now escaped back to Isthmus City. So Bond decides, well, I need to do something about it. And the rest of the movie is him on a revenge mission to not only take down Sanchez, but also his criminal and drug empire. And in the process, he quits MI6. He leaves. And yeah, he's on a lone mission now, and it's a wonderful moment because throughout the entire franchise leading up to this, we've had at least 15, 16 movies up to this point, I believe, and M has always been, although hard on Bond, he's always been a supporter of Bond and always says that if Bond believes in this, then he believes in Bond and he trusts Bond. And in this film here, he pretty much says to Bond, you need to leave this petty revenge. You need to just leave it because you're meant to be on a mission elsewhere and you haven't gone. So leave this alone. Let the CIA or the DEA deal with this. Not up to you. And Bond is pretty much saying, like, this is my friend. This is Felix. You know Felix. Like, I need to deal with this. And because of that, he tenders his resignation and he's gone. He escapes the safe house that MI6 has in Florida, and he's on the loose now. And when he gets into Isthmus City, it's this fantastic sequence of Bond infiltrating Sanchez's group, pretty much telling Sanchez that, yes, I was a secret agent previously, an agent for MI6, but I've quit that now. And Sanchez believes Bond wants to be a part of his group and trusts Bond enough and believes Bond because he's one of those people that he believes in loyalty.
Something you better understand, amigo. Loyalty is more important to me than money. Now get the cup.
Sanchez is such a stickler because he just, loyalty. For him, it is loyalty. If you're loyal to him, he will protect you with everything that he's got. And Bond manages to wiggle his way in. And because of that, Sanchez pretty much treats Bond as a house guest. He has him living at his house. Through that, Bond and Lupe become closer. They obviously sleep together, which Sanchez doesn't know. And Bond becomes pretty much like one of his informants. Bond feeds Sanchez false information, which Sanchez then goes out of paranoia and begins turning against his own once former crew. Like he kills this guy, Milton Crest, because Milton Crest had the money, like $5 million of Sanchez's money, but Bond went to Milton Crest, stole the money out of a plane as it was about to take off, flew to Isthmus City, deposited that money into one of Sanchez's owned banks. Then when Milton Crest arrived in Isthmus City, Bond suggested to Sanchez that it was a person arriving via boat that night, then gets to the boat before Sanchez, plants the $5 million back on the boat for Sanchez to realise, hang on, Milton Crest turned against me and lied to me, then kills Milton Crest. And when he returns to Bond, arrives back at the house before Sanchez, and he again thanks Bond for the information. And Bond is doing this bit by bit by bit to find out not only what Sanchez, what his drug operation is, but also the perfect opportunity to kill him. And the last act of the movie is at one of Sanchez's, he's got this massive compound where they're putting cocaine into fuel, into petrol, and they're mixing it together, and they've got all these different drug kingpins there from China and Japan and things like that. They're all there, and Sanchez is getting them into the business, and they're going to give him money and this and that, and it's an exchange of stuff. And when Bond is there, he's going to kill Sanchez that day. But Dario rocks back up at this point. He's now back in the movie, and Dario recognizes Bond from an earlier sequence at a boat bar. And when you see that Dario recognizes Bond, you're just waiting for that moment, and Dario and Bond are pretty much right beside each other, and Dario's telling him, don't move, I recognize you now. Bond knows he's in the hole now. And then when Sanchez looks over and sees them both, the smile on his face just turns to this serious look. And it almost feels like betrayal. Like Sanchez trusted Bond, and now all of a sudden Bond has turned against him. And the next 25-minute sequence of Bond fighting for his life, blowing up this massive compound where the drug manufacturing is, and then these truck sequences along the cliffside mountains is some of the best action we've seen in a Bond film in the last 5 years at this point, in the last couple of movies actually. And it's brilliant, absolutely phenomenal. You've got rockets going off, you've got planes flying, 3 trucks, explosions, massive fire. And a fun fact, when I was watching this movie just recently, there's a part in the movie where there's this massive area of fire, and Bond is in a semi truck, and he puts the brakes on, kicks the wheels up like that, and drives through on his back wheels. And when he comes out of the fire and lands down and drives off, that was the first memory I have I've ever seen a James Bond movie back in the early 90s or late 80s. I remember my dad took me and my two older brothers to the Melbourne Motor Show or the car show. And when we got back that night, my mum was watching a movie and I was sitting down in the living room. My mum was crocheting on the couch and we were all watching the movie, and the movie was License to Kill. And the first thing I remember seeing when I saw this movie was the truck coming out of the flames, dropping down, and then driving forward. And this was the first one that I ever saw, the first James Bond. That memory is embedded in my head. It is phenomenal. Now, I'm going to check up these two actresses because I always get the names of these actresses mixed up. Now, there are two fantastic women in this movie. Give me a moment. I'm just going to actually bring it up here because I try and get the pronunciation correct. So the two women in this movie, we've got Lupe, who I've mentioned, and she's played by Talisa Soto. Talisa Soto, I believe that's how you would pronounce it. Now, Lupe is the girlfriend, the lover of Sanchez, and she's a woman that wants to get out of the business. She does not want to be connected to this guy anymore. She's looking for any way to escape, and she falls in love with Bond and is absolutely infatuated with Bond throughout this movie. Like, there's a part in the movie where she goes to Bond's hotel where Q is in this movie, and Pam Bouvier. And Pam is one of the other love interests in this movie, but she shows up and she says, "You've got to help Bond. He spent the night with me, this and that. I love him, all this." And Q's like, yep, we'll help him, this and this and that. She eventually leaves, and then Pam is this moment, she just has this burst of, like, she's pissed off that Bond, she spent this, she imitates Lupe, and it's a fantastic moment. And Pam Bouvier is played by Carrie Lowell, and she's so beautiful in this movie. I think Pam and Lupe are the two most beautiful women in any single James Bond movie, from Dr. No right up to No Time to Die. I feel like this movie, License to Kill, has the sexiest women, the best looking women, and Pam is probably one of my favorites. She's easily in my top 5. Pam is in my top 5 Bond girls in the entire franchise. She is absolutely beautiful and holds her own. Like, the first time we see her, she's just in a meeting with oh my Lord, I've forgotten his name, with Felix Leiter. She's in a meeting with Felix Leiter, and it's just a 5-second sequence. She's there, she turns around, looks at Bond, stands up, thanks Felix, and walks out the room. That's it. You don't really think anything of it. You don't think you're meant to. You just, okay, no problems. That's Pam. Pam meet Bond. Yep, bye. The next time we see her, we find out that she's a very important connection to Felix and also to one of Sanchez's henchmen. And when we see her for the second time, and her main introduction in the movie, it's at a boat bar. It's like this bar on the water or something, and Bond shows up on a boat, and he's there to meet Pam Bouvier. And when he shows up, he sits down with her, and there all of a sudden, after a little bit of a conversation, Dario comes into the bar, and there's this massive little shootout, a punch-on. Bond and Pam escape. But when Pam says to Bond, "Are you packing?" Bond pulls out his Walther and shows her under the table. And then she just looks at him and goes, and she pulls out this shotgun, and she's holding this shotgun under the table. Now, first of all, how did she get the shotgun into the bar? How did nobody see her? And how did she manage to conceal it under the table and not arouse any suspicion? I don't know. But Pam is great, and I absolutely love her in this film. So well done for the character of Pam. She's brilliant. And when she cuts her hair, when she arrives in Isthmus City and she cuts her hair and she then introduces herself as James Bond's secretary or assistant, I cannot remember actually, when she reveals herself with her cut hair and this beautiful dress suit, it is let's just say young Ross was very much enamored by this woman. He was like, wow, that is the sexiest woman I've ever seen. And then she just gets better. I don't just search it out online, watch the movie if you haven't. Absolutely beautiful. Pam and Lupe are my dream Bond women. They are the best. Now, I can't talk highly enough of everybody in this movie, but because it is Timothy Dalton's final James Bond movie, I do want to discuss Timothy Dalton in a bit more detail. First of all, Timothy Dalton is my favourite James Bond. It took me over 20 years to finally make that realisation. Back in the day, I used to work at a video store, and I had a friend there named Besnick. And Besnick and I were both James Bond fanatics. We were absolute nuts when it came to James Bond. We watched the movies. We would always put a James Bond movie on at the video store when we were working together and just have the James Bond movie on, and we'd put different music on in the background. And we would always talk about James Bond, always watch James Bond. Every time he would come to the bottle shop where I was working, in the back room I would have a DVD player there, and we would watch The Living Daylights together. We always felt that Timothy Dalton was our James Bond. But over time, I always took On Her Majesty's Secret Service as my favourite Bond movie. In turn, I always thought, well, if it's my favourite movie and my favourite score and theme song, it has to be my favourite Bond. And it was always wired like that up there in my head. But in the last couple of years, I've really come around again and thought to myself, well, I can have a favourite movie and a different favourite Bond. And Timothy Dalton, for me, is my James Bond. He's everything that Daniel Craig wants to be as James Bond, but Timothy Dalton is 100 times better. And throughout his run, which is only 2 films, and should have gotten a third, but in his 2 movies, he never has a dull moment. His acting is always the best. He has some fantastic action sequences to really elevate his performance even more. And he really does play the role like I hadn't seen up to this point. Roger Moore was always like the cool uncle, and moving into Timothy Dalton, he was a younger, refreshed actor. He really did handle the Bond films perfectly. And I think in this film, License to Kill, Timothy Dalton really gives it his all, and you can see it on screen. Now, I spoke about the one sequence in this movie where they use Bond gadgets, and Timothy Dalton wanted to strip Bond of everything that helps him in previous movies, so strip away his support from MI6 and strip away his use of gadgets. And there is only one sequence. Now, there's a moment in the movie where Moneypenny in London, she's worried about Bond and gets in contact with Q, and Q goes to Isthmus City and brings a whole bunch of gadgets for Bond, and Q, from probably about an hour into the movie, is here until the end, and he uses these gadgets only in an action sequence where he's trying to assassinate Sanchez, and he fails. And it's great because it's only a single-use moment of gadgets, but again, you see Timothy Dalton really do play up the vulnerability, the revenge aspect, the anger. It's all here, and I feel like Timothy Dalton does that best. And I think he's getting the recognition he deserves in the last, say, 10 years as James Bond, where fans and critics as a whole have kind of come around and said, we understand what he was doing, and yeah, that does make a lot of sense. So for me, Timothy Dalton, wonderful. I could have done with another 2 or 3 movies from him. Unfortunately, we had the massive gap between 1989 when this released and 1994, 95 when GoldenEye was released. And yeah, he decided to bow out at that point, and then we got Pierce Brosnan in the role in GoldenEye, which isn't a bad thing. Pierce Brosnan in that movie is top notch, and in Timothy Dalton in this is the best he's ever been. So it's just a very different movie. It's a revenge film. It doesn't really have MI6 in it. London is not even a location that Bond goes to. Just look, I love this movie. I find it to be one of the best. It's my top 5 Bond film. It is starring my favorite Bond, and no complaints from me. No complaints from me. Now, I am going to go and bring up my list, because we've got the lists here. We've got a kill count of Bond, and we have 8. Bond kills a couple of people. He goes on a bit of a killing streak in this movie towards the beginning, where he's looking for those connected to Felix Leiter's... Well, you're not sure if Felix Leiter's dead at this point, and he's not. He's in intensive care, but you're not sure if he's going to survive. But actually, yeah, he does survive at the end of the movie, Felix, and he's on a phone call with Bond. And the tone of Felix at the end is probably my only downside to this film, where, you know, the guy's lost his wife, he's lost his legs, he's lost his whatever. He's been attacked by a shark and pretty much eaten alive. He survives, though, and he's laughing with Bond over the phone. And I'm just like, I know you can't end the movie on a sour note. I get it. But that's my only complaint with this movie, is that Felix is laughing after his wife's death. And I'm kind of thrown off when it comes to that. But anyway, Bond kills 8 people in this movie. He does kill Dario, and he does kill Sanchez, which is pretty rare for Bond to take out both the henchman and the main villain in the movie and actually be the one that causes their death. And Sanchez's death and Dario's death are some of the best in the whole film. Milton Crest, his end is pretty brutal, and I can't include that, but he dies in a pressurized chamber when the pressure is really dialed up, and that's pretty horrible. But yeah, we visit 2 locations in this movie. We've got Florida, and we have Isthmus, which is a fictional city in South America. And then finally, Bond beds 2 women, Pam Bouvier and Lupe. I'm not even going to try and pronounce that surname, but yeah, I look, final thoughts are, I absolutely love this movie. I feel like it's got all of the elements that make a wonderful Bond film. I don't think it loses anything without having MI6 there. As a matter of fact, I feel like it actually adds to the story, because now all of a sudden Bond can't rely on anybody except himself and those that he calls his friends, which is Pam and Q. And yes, he uses gadgets, but it's only a tiny little sequence. The rest of the movie is Bond and his wits, and it is his smarts and the way he manipulates Sanchez. And I absolutely love that, because we haven't really seen that in a Bond film up to this point. So, top marks there. I love it. Now, the next film I'm going to be talking about, the next review in the James Bond franchise, I should say, is going to be... I don't actually have it up here. I once had the VHS, but I don't have it anymore. But it's GoldenEye. We're going to be talking about GoldenEye next. And the first entry in the Timothy... this is the final entry of the Timothy Dalton. That, GoldenEye, will be the first entry in the Pierce Brosnan run of James Bond. So I hope you can come back for that. Now, I just want to thank everybody for everything, for the comments, for the likes, those that have subscribed. I really thank you so much. It does mean a lot. I know I'm only gaining like 1 or 2 subscribers every week, but for me, for someone that's just got a tiny little channel that edits films and scripts all this on his own, it means a hell of a lot to me. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for returning. For subscribing. If you haven't subscribed yet, think about doing that and throw me a subscribe down the bottom, or a like if you want. It helps out the channel and it helps me out, and means that I'll continue to do this for longer. So yeah. But my next review, I'm actually thinking about doing a movie called The Lost Boys. I'm not 100% sure. I just want to see people's reactions to that. I've posted another video up that went live before this one, which was almost like a haul video, me showing a couple of movies that I've purchased. Dr. No, VHS was one of them. I filmed it just before I filmed this review, and in that I asked people if The Lost Boys is a movie that they would like to see me review. So if you haven't watched that video, go watch that video and let me know in the comments what you think. But yeah, until I see you next time, take care of yourselves. Leave me a comment below. Follow me on Instagram. It'll be up on the screen here. And I'll see you next time. Ross will return.
We're south of the border. It's a man's world.